Hello, dreamers. I'm Jan. Welcome back to another night of relaxation and wonder. Tonight, the crisp autumn air outside feels just right for a tale filled with mystery, devotion, and ancient curses. Imagine yourself wrapped in a warm blanket as the leaves fall gently around you. We'll step into a world where love and fate collide in the quiet of an autumn evening. As we drift into this story, we'll sail the rivers of time on a quest that defies the gods themselves. So, settle in, and together we'll journey through enchanted forests, past iron chambers, and into the halls of the gods. Now close your eyes and let the story take you away. In the golden era of trade, the city of Ivory Port stood as a gleaming jewel by the sea. It was a city of tall ships with white sails that glided across the azure waters, bringing riches and exotic treasures from faraway lands. Merchants ruled here, and none was more daring or more proud than Caspian Marlowe. He was a man of immense wealth, famed for his adventurous spirit and sharp wit. Ivory Port's bustling streets were filled with traders and artisans, but it was Caspian's name that echoed through the corridors of power, his reputation spreading beyond the city's fortified walls. Caspian was known not only for his wealth, but for his unyielding devotion to the High King Aurelian, the god of wisdom and storms. Every voyage Caspian embarked upon, every business deal he struck, was blessed by Aurelian. In return, Caspian honored him with extravagant offerings at the temple, believing his fortune and safety rested solely in the god's hands. And for many years, this devotion brought him great success. His fleet of ships was unmatched, his coffers filled with gold, and his family was revered throughout the city. But far across the divine realms, Selene, the goddess of serpents and shadows, watched in growing frustration. Her temples were empty, her name whispered only in fear. She longed for the devotion that mortals so freely gave to Aurelian. Although her father, the ancient Eldaron, had granted her dominion over the serpents and the shadows of the earth, her pride was wounded by the lack of worship she received. In the celestial court, she was often overlooked, a mere shadow in the light of Aurelian's power. One fateful day, Eldaron gave Selene a challenge. Bring me the devotion of Caspian Marlowe, the most stubborn and powerful of mortals, and your name will be revered among men and gods alike. With a burning desire to claim her place in the mortal realm, Selene descended from the heavens to test Caspian's loyalty. Disguised as a humble traveler, Selene appeared to Caspian, offering him a vision of future success if he would but utter a single prayer to her. Yet Caspian, ever defiant, refused. His loyalty belonged to Aurelian alone, and he would not be swayed by another god, no matter how powerful. Selene's pride was stung. She returned again, this time in dreams, promising riches beyond his wildest imagination. Caspian still refused, waking from each dream with renewed conviction in Aurelian. But Selene was not easily defeated. Each time she was rejected, her determination grew. At last, in her anger, she devised a plan to take from Caspian the thing he valued most, his pride. Using her powers, she cast a spell that stole from him the storm's guard, an ancient protection spell given to Caspian by Aurelian himself. This had shielded his fleet from storms and misfortune on the high seas. Now vulnerable, Caspian was at her mercy. In the midst of a storm more violent than any ivory port had ever seen, Selene unleashed her wrath. The tempest raged for 3 days and nights, tearing through Caspian's fleet. The ships that had once carried him to wealth and power were lost to the depths of the sea. One by one, his great vessels sank beneath the waves, taking with them the fortunes he had worked a lifetime to build. When the storm finally passed, all that remained was wreckage, floating like driftwood on the turbulent waters. Caspian stood on the shores of Ivory Port, watching as everything he had built disappeared. But Selene had underestimated Caspian's will. Even in ruin, he refused to yield. He rebuilt his fortune from the ground up, his spirit unbroken, and his loyalty to Aurelian as strong as ever. With the help of his wife, Sonia, a woman as resilient as she was kind, he found solace in his family. Together, they had 6 sons, though fate was cruel, and one by one, each son was claimed by tragedy. It seemed, though, Selene's curse hung over them like a shadow. Yet, hope was not lost. After many years, Sonia gave birth to their 7th and youngest son, Lucas. Lucas was the light of Caspian's life, the child upon whom he placed all his hopes. Lucas grew into a fine young man, strong, kind-hearted, and beloved by all who knew him. He had a close friend, Isabella Moore, the daughter of Caspian's olden friend, Soren Moore, a wealthy merchant from the neighboring city of Willow Grove. From childhood, Lucas and Isabella were inseparable, their bond deepening into love as they grew older. As the years passed, it became clear to everyone that Lucas and Isabella were destined to marry. The union between the two families was celebrated throughout the region, and plans for their wedding were grand. But as the day approached, a dark prophecy was revealed. On the night of their wedding, Lucas would be bitten by a serpent and die, and yet Isabella's fate held no sign of widowhood. The prophecy sent a chill through both families. How could Lucas die on their wedding night, Yet Isabella's future showed no mark of grief. Caspian, desperate to protect his son, turned to Aurelian for guidance. He ordered the construction of a great iron chamber, a fortress within their home, where Lucas and Isabella would spend their wedding night, sealed off from any possible danger. No serpent could possibly find its way into such a fortress, Caspian thought. The chamber was built with great care. Every seam was sealed, every joint inspected, and not a single crack was left through which a serpent could enter. Caspian was sure that Lucas would be safe, but Selene, determined to see the prophecy fulfilled, used her powers to enter the dreams of the craftsman who had built the chamber. She promised him power and riches if he left just one small flaw, a gap so tiny that even Caspian himself would not notice it. The craftsman, tempted by Selene's offer, did as she asked. On the night of the wedding, a single thread-sized gap was left in the chamber's wall, just enough for Selene's servant, Sable, a serpent of the night, to slip through. As Lucas and Isabella lay sleeping, unaware of the danger, Sable struck. The bite was swift and silent, and Lucas' life was taken in an instant. When Isabella awoke the next morning, she found her beloved cold and lifeless beside her. Overcome with grief, she refused to accept his death. Her love for Lucas was too strong, too deep to be severed by fate. In a desperate act of defiance, she vowed to journey to the realm of the gods themselves and bring Lucas back to life. With Lucas's body wrapped in a cloak of woven reeds, Isabella set out on a raft down the river of souls, a dark and treacherous waterway that led to the realm of the gods. The journey was perilous, filled with dangers, both seen and unseen. Storms lashed at her small vessel, and shadows danced on the riverbanks, whispering of doom. But Isabella's resolve never wavered. Guided by her love for Lucas, she pressed on, determined to confront the gods and plead for his life. At last, after many trials, Isabella arrived at the shores of the celestial plain, where the gods held court. There she was met by Lady Neitha, a wise and ancient goddess who had once cared for Selene when she was but a young deity. Lady Neitha, moved by Isabella's devotion, agreed to help her gain an audience with the gods. Before the court of High King Aurelian, Isabella stood alone, holding Lucas's lifeless body in her arms. Her heart pounded as she began to dance, her movements graceful and filled with sorrow. In that moment, the gods saw not only Isabella the mortal, but Ilara, the celestial dancer she had once been in a past life. And in Lucas, they recognized Enaros, the partner she had loved across lifetimes. The gods were captivated by their love, a love that had transcended death and defied fate. Even Selene, who had sought to punish Caspian, was moved by the sight. Her anger faded, replaced by a deep respect for Isabella's unwavering devotion. She relented, agreeing to restore Lucas's life, but only under one condition. Caspian Marlowe, the man who had defied her for so long, must finally offer her his worship. Caspian, though still proud, agreed to the terms, but in a final act of defiance, he offered his prayer to Selene with his left hand, a gesture considered disrespectful in their culture. Selene, though angered by his insolence, accepted the offering, and Lucas was returned to life. From that day forward, Selene was not only the goddess of serpents and shadows, but also a patron of devotion, love, and redemption. Caspian's fortunes did not return to their former heights, but he found peace in the love of his family. He learned that true wealth lay not in gold or power, but in the bonds we forge with others. In honoring Selene, he discovered the beauty in shadows and the strength of love that can conquer even the darkest of curses. And so, in the city of Ivory Port, the names of both Aurelian and Selene became intertwined, their stories woven together like threads of a tapestry, each enriching the other's tale. The stormy seas of fate may have tossed them about, but love's unwavering flame burned bright, illuminating the path ahead. And so, the curse of the serpent goddess comes to an end. Good night, my dear friend. Sleep soundly.